Welcome to my dad's car. Enjoy!
Welcome to My Dad's Car, a podcast discussing our personal relationship with automotive nostalgia. And you know what? It doesn't even have to be about your dad's car. It can be your mum's, your grand's, your parents', guardians, or even a neighbour's. If it made an impression, let's talk about it. Good morning. How's things for you? Are you okay?
Yeah, not bad.
Hi, James. How's it going?
Hi, John.
Yeah, James, James. John, I used to work with James at Heritage, 15 years ago, pretty much, isn't it?
I've been trying to work it out for the last few days. I think I started there about 2006-ish.
Up until, 2010 or something like that? Yeah,
I was there 4.5 years, I think, in total.
Nice.
Well, yeah, let's jump in. Yeah, tell us about your earliest car memory.
So, very, very early. My dad has always been a car person. And when I was born, his fleet, I think, from memory, obviously not my memory, but what I've been told, because I was born, was a Land Rover Series 1 and a Morgan 4.4 sports car. That was the two vehicles that him and my mum had.
Okay.
So
that's a strong lineup there, isn't it?
Yeah. Practical.
Lots of wood.
Yeah, lots of wood and lots of drafts. Ideal when you're in North Devon on the Atlantic coast, literally 100 metres from the sea. Basically, I think for whatever reason, the Morgan was decided that was the car to take me home from hospital after I'd been born.
That's cool, isn't it?
Presumably, is that not a two-seater car?
It was 4.4, so
okay.
supposedly, I think it was more kind of 2 plus 2 halves, and then a bit like Caterhams sometimes have a box behind the
Got it. Okay.
rear seats, so they just put my Moses basket in that box.
Got it. I was going to say my immediate vision was 2 people in a 2-seater and a Moses basket being hung out the window
on the luggage rack at the back.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's pretty much the only time my dad ever drove the car with the weather kit on it. So
needs must.
Yeah. Apparently, I was more important than looking cool that day.
Very well. That's certainly one of the cooler ways to go home, isn't it? Compared to, I'd say so. Anyway,
so it sort of just grew from there. I mean, growing up, there were MGBs, MGB V8s, Scimitars, all that sort of late 70s chod that has now suddenly become collectible again.
So was it a deliberate choice from him he favoured the older car?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, he'd grown up he was driving in the 60s, so he'd grown up in the era of a Mini and stuff like that. So it was kind of next level progression, really. And people weren't really buying, certainly at that level, people weren't buying anything other than British cars. The amusing thing is he'd actually had a load of money saved up, which is quite impressive for his age, because he was only mid to late 20s when I was born. He'd saved up enough money to buy a Dino 246.
Nice.
And then my mum announced that she was pregnant, and that was game over on that one. And it took him a fair few years to get the Ferrari dream a bit later on.
What's your earliest conscious memory of going to school in whatever it was, or going on holiday? Or
my mum's MGB 4-cylinder hardtop GT, which at the time would have been Harvest Gold It was an absolute shed. And I moved from Devon to Sussex when I was about 4.
Okay.
And where we lived out in the middle of nowhere on the bottom of the South Downs. And my school was in a very small village where I actually ended up buying a house years later. And going across the roundabout in the middle of that village centre and hearing something fall off the car, which wasn't an unusual scenario. And I think from memory, it was either a chrome trim ring off of one of the headlamps or one of the beauty rings off of the Rostar wheels.
Okay.
Yeah, but that car stuck about for a hell of a long time. That car reappears many times throughout the years.
Did it remain in her ownership, or did she get rid of it and then crazily buy it back?
Well, my parents split up when I was just 13. So my dad kept the car, but by then it had been off the road for, probably 6, 7, maybe 8 years.
Okay.
But it reappeared later, which I'll feed it back in when appropriate. But yeah, that's probably my first memory of, I remember this car from this period. But I know I was interested because I knew what everything was. You know, we had a lift sharing scheme to school, and one of the people's parents had a 1300L Capri, like proper poverty spec. And then by weird comparison, so that was like a late Capri. What were they, Mark 3?
I think so.
Mark 4, something like that. Whatever the last shape was. But he also had a Mark 2, I think it is. I'm not very up on Fords, but the Coke bottle Cortina.
Okay.
2000 GXL, which seemed to be the sort of polar opposite of the Capri. But yeah, and the other one had a ex-MOD 109 canvasback Land Rover. So even then we were still sort of being peddled about in weird old cars.
Yeah. That's some cool cars, though. Compare it to now when you're going to school in the Santa Fe or something like that. I don't know. No disrespect to the Santa Fe. But...
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And, you know, we grew up around tractors and countryside, motocross bikes and off-road buggies and all of that sort of thing. So there's always something to do with an engine. Got involved in karting at quite a young age. Did that for a few years. So there's always something interesting. You know, when I was a kid, I do remember actually my mum's old Mini was next to our cottage in North Devon. Again, been off the road for years. Nettles growing through the floor, all that sort of thing. It was a proper Paddy Hopkirk accessories catalogue job, as my dad had tried to pimp it up for her. But I used to sit in that and pretend to drive, and was gutted the day a big old grab lorry came along and picked it up and took it to the scrapyard in the Sky. So that's probably my earliest memory of a car, but my earliest memory of being in a moving car would have been the MG.
As you got a bit older, James, did you have any say in the vehicle choice of your parents at all when they were looking to get something new?
Probably the first instance of that would have been about 91-ish. So I was 11, 12-ish. Dad had got a company car for, not for the first time, I think, but it was the first decent company car. And he bought a 5 Series.
Oh, now we're talking.
And I think it was E34 shape.
Yeah.
So like the first one they introduced the V8 into.
Yeah.
But it wasn't a V8. It was a lowly 520, but he wasn't going to sink to a 4-cylinder one.
Yeah, yeah. I had 2 520s, E34s, so fully aware of the pain they can cause and and the joy.
Well, both of them were brand new at the time.
Nice.
So they were pretty good. One was manual black, which was in 1989, and then I had a 92 auto in like a dark metallic green, a bit like the VW Dragon metallic green, I think it is.
Okay.
And then, my mum went through, she became a bit of a hippie. And for some reason, which I seem to now kind of slightly understand, she wanted a Citroen 2CV. So she bought one. That was a shed, an absolute shed. And it got to a point with that one, it was so bad, we just gave up with it, and she bought another one, which was marginally better. And then one of Dad's workmates bought round his wife's car, which she'd just bought. He knew my dad was into cars and said, take it out with the boy for an hour or so and enjoy it. And it was a Phase 2 5GT Turbo.
Nice.
In tungsten grey. The best colour. And my dad loved this thing.
Nice.
To him, it was like everything the 5 Series wasn't. It brought back all the sports car memories, the mini memories, all that sort of thing. So the next day he went and bought one for my mum, apparently. And that sort of takes us up to probably about the point where I started driving as a sort of, early teens, mid-teens. Had a lot of kids who grew up on farms in the area we were in, so had a lot of field cars. We wrote off, an alarming number of Escort Mark 1s, Cortina Mark 1s, Mark 2s, stuff now that we just look back on and go, why did we do that? But we were buying them from, the Friday ad for 15 quid, driving them round for 3 months, ruining them, and then selling them to the fire brigade to practice cutting up for what we paid for them. So, as 15-year-old kids, that seemed pretty cool.
It's good business.
Yeah, exactly.
What happened to the GT Turbo?
When my parents split up, my mum took it, completely neglected it, and then sold it to Buttons for a dealer, which then was the target of an arson attack, and the car was part of that. So,
goodness gracious, that is a grisly death, isn't it, to that car?
Yeah. So, unfortunately, it met a bit of an untimely end.
I was hoping you were going to say it's been tucked away, garage, still got it.
I wish I could. But yeah, so that was then about time where I started driving. I was a bit late because I was riding motorbikes, so I wasn't really interested. So I passed my test when I was 19, and I ended up with a Renault 5, which I promptly did I didn't crash it, but I did blow it up. So I took a bank loan, as everyone does at 19, while still living at home, and bought my first Golf GTI.
Wonderful. Just if we go back to just the GT Turbo, obviously your parents had that for a while. If you kind of went out in that, did you have music on in the car? Were they smokers? Kind of set the scene. So
it'd be me and my dad used to confiscate it every Sunday.
Yep.
And we would have a little circuit. So it would start off where we lived, which was a little village called Plumpton, if anyone knows it, bottom of the South Downs in Sussex. Yep. And then we would drift out through Lewes, along the bottom of the Downs, out towards Kingston, out towards the coast, so sort of Seaford out that way, back towards Brighton along the coast road, pick up a KFC, sit on the seafront, eat KFC.
Glorious.
Come home, usually having burnt an awful lot of fuel.
And was your dad a conservative driver, or was he pedal to the floor?
He wasn't terribly subtle. He never has been, really. I think throttles generally to him are kind of switches. He's an engineer, supposedly, but he's now a kind of gentleman farmer, so yeah, his mechanical sympathies. He knows how you should do things. He doesn't necessarily do them that way.
What's he kicking around in now?
So, well, that's the story in itself. So, after my parents split up, I was going out with a girl who lived in Southwater. She had a problem with her car, so she took it to a local garage, which was run by a woman. Quite unusual at the time, because this would have been about, I don't know, well, it would have been 99. She had an Elise Series 1, and they were still pretty new at the time.
This is the lady at the garage or your girlfriend?
Lady at the garage. Yeah, they were still pretty new, and they still were commanding more money second-hand than they were retail, because you just couldn't get them.
Quite a groundbreaking car, wasn't it, when it first came on the scene, the Elise?
Amazing car. Still is.
Real sort of, hang on a minute, Lotus have woken up.
Yeah, exactly. What they've been like, literally been asleep for 20 odd years. And then all of a sudden they just bring this out. Because you had that M111 Elan before, which was a bit of a...
Front engine, front wheel drive, wasn't it?
Yeah, Isuzu engine.
They were just doing a Spree, Elan, weren't they? And then the Elise has come along and it was like, oh.
Yeah, a proper car.
Very nice. Yeah.
So my dad took a bit of a fancy to this. So he offered a bit of money. He'd come into some money one way or another. Can't remember how. He has a habit of doing this. So he offered a reasonable sum for it. And she said yes. So he took it out for a test drive. And then she said to me, well, do you want to take it out? I was like, well, I'm 19. She went, and it was chucking it down with rain. Andy's warned me not to swear. Hence a slightly pregnant pause there. Chucking it down with rain. And anyone who's driven a Series 1 Elise, and probably a Series 2, will know that they're not exactly watertight. So if it's raining, they do tend to mist up a bit and leak. So you couldn't really see much out of it.
This is going badly, isn't it?
Well, it didn't go badly, as it happened. In the end, actually, I bought it back in one piece and had a thoroughly nice time. So he bought it, but that left us with a problem, because the single garage we had at home was full of the aforementioned MG, which had been through a restoration at some period and then just gone straight back into the garage. And it was a crappy resto, because it had all started to bubble and micro blister and all of that anyway. So Dad decided, we needed rid of this thing finally. So he palmed that off onto her and then had somewhere to store the Elise. So eventually the MG came back, sat on the driveway for ages. And I think eventually gave it away to someone, gave it away to a friend of his girlfriend at the times. It is still about on the road today. I see it. It's not looking its best, but
It's had a hard life.
Well, and it's a chrome bumper, so it could still always look a lot worse. But yeah, so he had the Elise for a few years, and then he came in some money again, which this time I do know how it happened, was my uncle, so his elder brother, died very unexpectedly. So it was all very sad. He was single, there was a house, there was always stuff left over, and a lot of money. My dad had grown up, although he's a Londoner, he'd grown up in the New Forest. So just down from Ringwood, where my uncle lived, and my dad had lived in New Milton, which is pretty close as well, is the Ferrari dealer in Brockenhurst, Lyndhurst, whichever one it is, Meridian, Medina.
Yeah.
So he went down there and they had a 348 in red, hard top, early one, 91, with cream leather interior. So he bought it.
Naturally.
At the time, he had a choice of 2 328 GTSs, same spec, or the 348. And he bought the 348. In hindsight, he bought the wrong car. But anyway.
Did you go with him to get it?
Yeah, we went down in the Elise, which he insisted on driving with no roof in the middle of December in the pouring rain. And I could barely move by the time we got out. But they were amazing. The dealership were absolutely stunning. They'd got breakfast for us all and so on. And so we picked this car up.
Did he chop the Elise in?
Yeah. I say my uncle had died at that time. He hadn't, thinking about it, because the first place we went was his house to show him. And he's in a picture with it, so he hadn't died. So I don't know where that money came
If
from.
the insurance company are listening, then...
Bit of a twist.
No, it's weird. I have the picture with him in it and his brother. So I don't know what... Oh, he'd sold his company. That was it. So, yeah, he had the Ferrari for a long time. And as with Ferraris, Andy, you'll be familiar with this, being a Stuttgart fan. Porsche owners brag about how many miles they've done. Ferrari owners brag about how many miles they haven't done. So we ended up with Ferrari that was constantly going wrong because it just was never getting used. So he tried to sell it, didn't really have any joy. Took it to a dealer who will remain nameless.
Did he buy the Ferrari with the intention of just sort of giving it a little tickle on a Sunday only? And then did it just kind of spiral into, I'm not even using it on the Sundays because of weather? Or
Yeah, I think he thought when he bought it, it was going to be an Elise replacement. But it wasn't, because every time he tried to drive it, something would be wrong with it. Or, as you say, the weather wouldn't be right, or, you know, the immobiliser was playing up or whatever. So
I'm assuming whatever the issue was as well, we're probably talking it wouldn't be cheap as well with the Ferrari.
Weirdly, some bits are and some bits aren't. So like oil filters, yeah, there are two of them, but they're Fiat Tipo ones.
Mm.
So if you buy the Fiat Tipo ones, they're about £4 each. If you buy the Ferrari ones, they're about £80 each. But they're actually just the same part that comes in the same box.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also presuming he had a sensible, in inverted commas, daily driver. It wasn't just Ferrari or walk.
No, he had a CLK 55 AMG.
Nice runaround.
Yeah, that was a cool car. I found that one for him, actually. So that is me influencing a car. I literally found that one. So yeah, the Ferrari sat around for years and was gradually getting used less and less, to the point where it was literally going for an MOT every year, and that was it.
Oh, wow. So, would you want to own any of those cars again? Have you got unfinished business?
The Elise.
Yeah?
Ferrari can go to hell.
Would he have another one? Would he get another Ferrari, or is he kind of done with that as well?
No, I've shown him the right side of the path now, so I don't see him. But he still likes unreliable stuff, because he currently bats about in, aside from the other vehicle, him and my stepmum have a new shape Range Rover Sport and a previous shape Land Rover Discovery. So he still likes buying things with inherent problems.
Yes. Obviously, yeah, knowing your dad had the Ferrari, but yeah, I wasn't aware that he had it when you were a bit older. I was kind of imagining as a kid and kind of how that would like play out at school and stuff. But obviously you were kind of driving age by then, so.
Yeah. I never liked it. I don't like them. Never have done. Never had a poster of one on the wall. Never really had models of them. Just didn't like them.
It's a funny old thing, isn't it, the Ferrari? It's definitely I wouldn't go as far to say it's a Marmite thing, but I'm in the same boat as you, James. I personally, like, if I could afford it, I just wouldn't. I don't know. It's just. But then again, I suppose, I mean, I'd love to have that problem at my doorstep, but...
Well, yeah, exactly. But I think even if, you were presented with that, okay, we've got unlimited funds to spend on 10 cars, what would it be? A Ferrari wouldn't even feature, wouldn't come close. I don't get it. I don't get the fuss. They're over-engineered to the point where they're inherently unreliable. They're mind-blowingly badly built, especially if you actually get up close to one. They are terrible.
What about the GT Turbo? Would you go French?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'd love one, but they've just skyrocketed now.
It's probably Elise money, isn't it?
Less than that, probably. I think the last decent one I saw was up for about 8 or 9.
And it's got a roof.
It was, well, I mean, yeah, of sorts. They were never exactly sturdy cars.
I suppose the rarity factor of that vehicle has just driven it way sort of through the roof, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it was like all of them, really. Yeah, you look on all those old hot hatches, so XR2s, XR3s, RS Turbos, 205 GTIs, Novas especially, 5 turbos, all of that sort of thing just disappeared. They fell to a price point where idiots like us lot could get hold of them, age 21 or whatever, and we blew them up and modified them to the point where they became horrifically ugly.
Then you get the next one.
Yeah, and they just weren't built to last, were they? So
definitely not. The exception to that rule is the Golf, isn't it? Of the sort of the 70s, 80s hatches, they're the ones which are still around.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Might not be as fast, just more solid.
So what did your what did your mum go for? Because we split the story earlier on. Did she went 2CV, anything else?
5 turbo, not by her choice. Renault 5, which is one that I then owned and ruined. Various Citroen AXs, as you can see, she had a penchant for small French hatches. Then a Tigra, for some reason.
You wanted something smaller than an AX?
Yeah. And they now live in France, like my stepdad and my mum, as sort of complete hippies. So they have some awful Dacia thing. It doesn't even have a radio. It has like an aerial, and it has speaker grills, but no radio.
Very strange. Maybe it was lifted. Very sort of 80s style robbery.
No, it's just terrible. I say it's terrible, but it does the job as a car perfectly. But I couldn't live with it.
So speaking of radios, James, Dad and music or radio, what sort of thing did he have on in the cars? Or was he just listening to the fine notes of the Ferrari or the Elise?
So in the Elise, both actually had stereos, but were never ever listened to. In fact, I nabbed the Kenwood mask unit out the Elise and put that in my Mark II, and put what was in my Mark II in the Elise, because the one in the Elise never got used and my dad didn't care.
I thought you were going to say you just left an empty gap like the Dacia.
No, probably should have done. Yeah, weight saving and all that. But no, I mean, he sort of was Dire Straits and a lot of rock and roll and that sort of thing. He's fairly musical. He's got a very large guitar collection as well. So
finger tapping, any of that on the steering wheel?
Probably. And copious amounts of wet wipes to wipe away KFC grease, because my mum was a vegetarian, and hopefully will never hear this, because would probably kill me now if she realised that we used to take her car out and eat KFC in it.
That's probably a good place to end it, isn't it? on that bombshell.
Well, I mean, Dad bought a Porsche in the end. That's probably the best bit. And it's a 997.1 Guards Red,
nice
full aero kit,
cool,
with cream leather. So it's the most Ferrari Porsche you could ever get.
But it works.
he's happy with it. He did more miles in 4 weeks than he'd done in 6 years in the Ferrari.
Why is there that reluctance with, like, prime example, your dad? He's obviously your car nut, but he was a bit tentative on going over to Porsche. Why would that be? I don't really get it, because obviously it's ticking all the boxes, really, isn't it?
Probably because I'd recommended it, and he would never, ever be prepared to accept a recommendation from anything I'd suggested.
Okay.
But yeah, it's never lived in the garage. It just lives outside in the farmyard all the time. Rarely gets washed, and it gets used all year round, apart from when it's so snowy where they are that they have to use one of the Land Rovers or Range Rovers to get out. But yeah, it's used for the shopping run and all that sort of thing.
Oh, it's a happy ending then.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for joining us, James.
You're welcome, mate.
Thanks, James.
Nice to meet you, John.
So we'll do a quick wrap up. That was some terrible cars, some good cars.
That was a good history of cars, wasn't it? I think, and clearly still like fully immersed in it to this day as well. Really good.
Yeah, coming home from the hospital in a Morgan, I imagined him on a luggage rack. That was kind of the vision in my head. So
strapped next to the picnic basket. Yeah.
So yeah, that was pretty good. And then obviously, a recurring MGB in Harvest Gold. What a colour.
It's a lovely colour name, isn't it? Yeah. And the Ferrari story, that's kind of, that to me is the sort of story, if you're looking at getting a Ferrari and you go on like a forum or something, that'll be in like the cons list of, I had a Ferrari.
Yeah.
You just end up not using it and this goes wrong and it costs this. But I'm sure there are I know there's some great stories out there from Ferrari owners. So maybe that's a target for us to get someone on the show that knows someone that's doing well with a Ferrari.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, a good little run. Obviously, a nice relationship with the GT Turbo.
Yeah,
and obviously the KFC story, which we'll keep from his vegetarian mother.
And clearly a strong influence on James as well, being around cars, being in cars all the time.
Yeah,
it's really sort of rubbed off on him, hasn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, we'll wrap it up. Another one, John.
Another one, yeah. And thanks for listening. Hopefully we've gained another subscriber, maybe.
Yeah, a whole subscriber.
Whatever it is, yeah. We'll take half of one. Why not?
Can't be too greedy.
We're fully inclusive.
Absolutely. So thank you very much, and roll the credits. Thanks for tuning into My Dad's Car. We're new at this and really appreciate you listening and supporting the podcast. If you enjoyed it, please click subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Give us a follow on social media and tell your friends to tune in too if you think it will be up their street.